Well, here are some just beautiful pictures of some of the scenery we saw as we walked downtown in Athens. We saw a number of very, very beautiful cathedrals and buildings and chapels, some beautiful artwork and some statuary, and so just a little bit of beautiful imagery before the video proper starts, which is not in an exceptionally beautiful place, but me just standing out on the balcony of my hotel. So in just a minute, well, that'll begin, but I thought I'd give you something beautiful to look at here at the beginning of the video. Hope you enjoyed. So I'm filming this morning from the balcony of my hotel in Athens, and you can see around me are some apartments and all that direction, some more apartments, some hotels, some stores. And on this particular morning, I'm thinking about some of the things that we are thankful to the Greek people for. So the Greek people have given us democracy. They have given us engineering and science. They have contributed to the arts through music and through drama and poetry and some of the great sagas of the West, including the Odyssey and the Iliad. And of course, they've given us philosophy. So the father of Western philosophy is Socrates. Socrates lived in the 5th century, and we primarily know Socrates through the posthumous testimony of his two most famous students, Xenophon and Plato. And Plato, of course, is so important to Western philosophy that one scholar said that all of Western philosophy is either arguing for Plato or against Plato, but all of Western philosophy has to take into account Plato. But Socrates is the father of Western philosophy, and philosophy really has to do with two primary ideas, at least in the West. So the primary idea is, how do we know what we know? What is the source of knowledge? How do we discern knowledge? How do we test truth claims? The other philosophical idea that Western philosophy deals with is, what is the meaning of the good life? What does it mean to do good, to become fully human, to avoid evil and injustice? And Western philosophy deals with that. As I was thinking about the ideas of Western philosophy and how Western philosophy was born in this country, I was also thinking of the biblical wisdom literature. So the biblical wisdom literature is primarily found in Ecclesiastes, the book of Proverbs, and the book of Job. There are some smatterings of the wisdom literature in other places, but those are our primary sources. And what Proverbs primarily claims, and it's claimed right in line with the Torah, with Deuteronomy, and that is the best way to live and the best possibility of achieving the truly human life, the truly good life, is to obey God and to follow his precepts and his commands. And that's going to give us our best chances at living the fully human life. But the books of Ecclesiastes and the book of Job are thrown in there to raise a question about this. What happens when you follow the precepts of God? What happens when you pursue wisdom? What happens when you pursue the good life and seek to avoid evil, and life turns out terrible anyway? The book of Job and the book of Ecclesiastes says sometimes you can do all the right things and life does not turn out the way you had hoped. Bad things still happen to good people, and sometimes even good people struggle with the apparent meaninglessness of life. And the purposes of raising those questions is so that we don't give superficial answers to difficult questions and problems. The biblical wisdom literature is intent on making us be honest, having intellectual integrity. It is also telling us we cannot gloss over or skip over the problems of suffering and evil and injustice and even meaninglessness in this world, that we have to wrestle deeply with those things. It does not forbid us. It in fact invites us to raise and to wrestle with difficult questions. But it does so while reminding us that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Living in light of who He is not only gives us permission to ask questions, it empowers us to ask those questions without shrinking from them, without being the intellectual or emotional coward. Living in the fear of the Lord says, listen, you have a human responsibility to ask these difficult questions. And the book of Ecclesiastes gives us emotional permission to sometimes not be okay with our answers, or even with God's answers, and to sometimes be able to just live with that unease, because we're human, right? So the fear of the Lord, and both of these writings also, along with Deuteronomy and Proverbs, encourage us to seek to do good and right and justice, to seek to do what is right, and to shun evil. The temptation in a painful, broken world, a world of suffering and injustice, is just to join in with all the wrongdoers, right? To just by any means necessary get whatever we want to get out of it, to simply seek our own pleasure and our own needs. But the wisdom literature tells us, no, shun evil, stay away from evil. It's a poison to the soul, it's a poison to the mind, it is a poison to the human family and to society. And so all of this culminates in the person of Christ, where the biblical story and the message is always going. Paul says that Jesus embodies the wisdom of God, and the crucifixion is where we see the wisdom of God come into focus. God steps down into humanity. He walks the human path with us. He embodies our suffering. He takes it upon himself so that he can begin redeeming the human story from the inside out. But Paul says in 2 Corinthians that the wisdom of God is weakness and folly to the Jew, and foolishness to the Gentile or to the Greek. He says, where are the philosophers of this world? Where are the wise sages of this world in light of who Jesus is? But the weakness of God is the strength of God. The foolishness of the world is the wisdom of God embodied in Jesus. That if we want to understand life's most difficult problems and questions, if we want to understand God's answers and His wisdom to these things, we have to look at Christ. We have to look at the crucified Christ and understand God's answers in light of His life, death, and resurrection.